All right. Hey, listen, if I've not had an opportunity to meet you, our first service was packed. If I've not had an opportunity to meet you, my name's Chris. I have the opportunity to be the founding and lead pastor here. We got a great staff, great volunteers that help run this church family, and I'm really thankful for you. We're in a series called I Am LifeQuest. We're talking about who is LifeQuest, what are our values. We've got 2 more weeks after this week in this series. And then we're going to start going through the Gospel of John. I'm excited about that. We're going to spend a good majority of time in 2025 going through the Gospel of John. We're in a series called I Am LifeQuest, and here's how we came up with it. It's a series about our values, who we are. How many of you work for a company, organization that has values and a mission statement? Raise your hand. All right, put your hands down. How many of you could tell me all of the values and your mission statement? All right, one person. All right, perfect. That's great. Here's the deal. A value is a behavior that you want acted out. And we had previously 8 or 9 values that we had. We're like, hey, we want these values lived out. And Pastor Jordan and I began to talk about this toward the beginning, or actually it was it was the springtime. And we started talking about, okay, what are the values? And so we've been quizzing each other. And then we went to the staff to quiz them, and they didn't know what the values were. And I'm like, if you have values and a mission statement, and nobody knows what the values are, and they're supposed to be behaviors you want lived out, and they don't know what the mission statement is, you're not going to accomplish the mission, and you're not going to have any behaviors that you really want lived out. So, unless it's just by accident. So we began to work on it, and here's how we did it. We started looking at names of people and the characteristics of who they are, the people that we'd say, man, that's a LifeQuester. That's somebody that represents who LifeQuest is about. You know what I'm saying? And we started coming up with names, and Pastor Jordan would do it, and I would do it. We'd meet, and we keep talking about it every Monday. We have a standing meeting at 8:30. And then we took it to our staff, and we did the same thing. And then we got a larger staff group, and then leaders. And the same thing happened. Like, we came down with 4 key values of who LifeQuest is. So that's why we're calling it I Am LifeQuest. And last week, we learned about authentic people. The big idea last week was when I live authentically, it draws people to Jesus, right? Like when I'm authentic, the opposite of authenticity is fake, or the opposite of authenticity is being a hypocrite. All right, and we learned last week we're all hypocrites, right? Because a hypocrite is anyone that said one thing and done another. Even if you did that one time in your life, you're a hypocrite. And so you're like, okay. So I love it when people go, I don't go to church. How come you don't go to church? Because a bunch of hypocrites. Well, yeah, but if you found a church and there weren't any hypocrites and you wait, it'd make it hypocrites. So, yeah, that was just a joke. That felt bad. Thanks for laughing, Melissa. So today, the value that we're going to talk about is we're talking about authentic people, and then we're talking about reflecting Jesus. All right, now, how many of you have ever, is there anybody in the audience or online, you can raise your hand in the chat room, who is really good at charades? Anybody? Okay, 1 or 2 people. Okay, I'm not going to call you up here right now, but I'm terrible at it. I'm like, are you a monkey? No, and they'll yell at you, no, I'm not a monkey. And they'll be acting somehow. Charades is when I do something with my hands and the motions, but I don't tell you what I'm doing. Isn't that how we should live as Christ followers, as Christians? I don't have to tell somebody I'm a Christian. I should live it out. So if you have a Bible, turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. We're going to spend most of our time in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Normally, I like to go speak on a group of verses. Today, I'm going to start with the last verse I want to talk to you about. And then we're gonna kind of build back up if I don't forget all of the other verses. I got so excited in the first service that I forgot the other verses. So it says, therefore, we are what? Ambassadors. Ambassadors, you have an ambassador to the United States of America that's in another country, and they represent who? They represent the United States of America. And so when they're dressing, when they're speaking, the way they live, even when they're in their hotel lobby, they're representing the United States of America. And Scripture says, and the Apostle Paul said, the church at Corinth, he said, we are ambassadors for who? Christ. God is making his appeal through us, through me, through you. We implore you on behalf of Christ to be reconciled. And so I think of a mirror. Now, does anybody like to stand in front of a mirror? All right? Yeah, okay. I mean, my wife has this magnifying mirror that will tell you the real truth. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm looking pretty good. A couple years ago, I discovered that I needed to do some moisturizer on my face so that I didn't get to be like 90 years old and making my skin look like it's like cracked and crinkled and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And so I got this moisturizer and started using it. I'm like, I'm looking pretty good. And then all of a sudden, I get my wife's magnifying mirror. I don't like it. I mean, I do like it when it shows me, oh, okay, I need to pluck that hair or that hair. Okay, some of you need to look at the magnifying mirror more often. Okay, I'm just saying. All right, but you know, okay, let me just be real. Can I just be real with you? It drives me crazy. Like if a dude has hair coming out of his nose and I could take a weed eater up there to get rid of that, y'all need to get rid of that, okay? And a ear, you know what I'm saying? All right. But listen, a mirror, you know, all a mirror does, the mirror is not a bad person, right? A mirror is not a bad person. A mirror just reflects. Everybody say reflect. Reflect. A mirror reflects the image in front of it. I am to be an ambassador, a reflection of Christ. See, people don't know how much you know and what you know until they know that you care. So what does the world see in me? Do they really see that I care? Or are they just seeing how much I know? You see, normally I do a big idea. I'm going to call it the big idea question today, okay? The big idea question is this. How do I reflect Jesus in my life? Now, we have a habit in church, so let me break it down for you. We have a habit in church. In church, we have a habit of when a pastor asks a question, we think of everybody else except ourselves. We're getting on the text right now. We're taking pictures. We're putting it on a social. We're sending it to our friends. If our spouse isn't here, we're like, you really need to listen to this. And if you're here in person, you're like nudging your spouse. Stop nudging your spouse. Stop sending people pictures and trying to drop hints. You need to focus on you. You. How does Chris Pinion reflect Christ? Reflect Jesus in my life? See, reflecting Jesus requires a transformed heart. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be what? Transformed, say it with me, by the renewal of your mind. Listen, you can't separate your heart and your mind. Like, what I'm thinking is in my heart. And so the deal is, am I transformed by the renewal of my mind? Let me tell you how the renewal of my mind works. I wrote a book about this called Quantum Leap, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. The way it works is daily. It doesn't happen one time. I don't just go, I'm just going to go to a mindset coach and I'm going to do it one time. I'm going to be good the rest of my life. I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. You know what happens? Daily, if not minute by minute, sometimes hour by hour, I have to chisel away and work on my mindset. Because at any moment, I could find myself in a situation that changes my mindset. I could find myself in a situation that affects my mindset. How many know what I'm talking about? I just want to know that I'm preaching to real people today. All right? So it's like transformation begins within. Look at it. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Transformation begins where, church? Within. Everybody say it with me. Transformation begins within. There's a word that we use called sanctification. Now, I know a pastor that started a church, and he had all of his church friends, all of his pastor friends going, you know, you can't be using those big theological words. People won't understand it. And he said he bought into that until he went to Starbucks and he was standing behind a guy that they said, sir, what would you like? And he said, I want a venti skinny caramel macchiato. And he said he figured if they could say and understand what they meant by venti skinny caramel macchiato, that they could learn what the word sanctification means, or, you know what I'm saying? So sanctification means this ongoing process of renewal. Listen, I have known Christ. I came to know Jesus. The beginning of coming to know Jesus was the week before I turned 12. And I have been on a journey of continually being transformed, being sanctified, and I'm not there yet. And neither will you, even though you might act like it. It is an ongoing process, and when you think you're there, you're either delusional or you're in heaven, and then you will be there. How many know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And transformation begins within. Now I want to take you back up. I started with 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 20. Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. It says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. In other words, when Christ comes in, the old starts to go. And the new starts to come. That I start to learn how I used to reflect my old self. I used to reflect selfishness. I used to reflect greed. I used to reflect gossip. I used to reflect whatever. And now my goal is over time Christ is in me, and I reflect Christ to the world. And when Jesus lives in you, you will begin to reflect who he is. Don't answer it out loud, do you reflect Jesus to the world around you? As followers of Jesus, we are to reflect him in every aspect of our life. And I want to give you a lot to think about today. And then we're going to go into some worship through music to respond to his word, and give you a time to pray and to respond to his word. What does it look like to reflect Jesus in life? Number one, reflecting Jesus means living out his love. That's hard to do sometimes. How many know what I'm talking about? Let's get real. How many know what I'm talking about? That's hard to do, right? The Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 34 through 35 says, and it's in red in my Bible, which means it's the words of Jesus. And he said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. And by this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Can I be honest with you? Do you want to know why the bar is more packed than the church house on Sunday morning? Because somebody can go in and they can be themselves. Busted, broken, messed up. And people are going to accept them. I'll tell you a story. 6 years ago, and I wish James was here. Perfect story. James is a guy, skinny like a pencil. He came and sat on the front row a couple times, and I've been in the first responder world enough, even though that I'm not a paramedic, I can look at someone's eyes and I can tell what's going on with their pupils, that something's not right, okay? Penny, you got good at that over the 37 years of being a charge nurse. And I could tell he was tripping on something. I'd try to talk to him. And so one Sunday, he was tripping on something. I don't know what he was tripping on. But while I was preaching, he got up to preach with me. Now, our head of safety, Darlene is now our head of safety. Darlene has been a chief of police. She's been in law enforcement for, I don't know how long, but she's been in law enforcement for a minute. Let's give it up for Darlene for being our head of safety. If you're a guest with us, you just need to know that we have a great safety team in all of our buildings. We have somebody with cameras all 360 around the building that watch our facilities, so that if there was anything that needed emergency response from law enforcement to EMS to make sure that we protect people and their vehicles and your property and everything. And so Don Bass at the time was our director of safety, and Don had been in law enforcement for 32 years and a detective for most of those years for Grandview, all right? And so Don is sitting on the second row. James jumps up on stage, and all I know is Don made one step, and his second step as he was on the stage, grabbed James, and James was off the stage on the third step. You know what I'm saying? Like, Don was moving. And Don, like, I'm like, dang, dude, you can move fast. I don't want to mess with you. Let me tell you. And let me tell you how this works here at LifeQuest. We want anyone to come. We have people that come that are drunk. You're welcome. We'll get you some coffee. We'll get you some water. We're going to love on you. If you're tripping on drugs, tripping on something, okay? We're here. If you do not follow the directions of our safety team or our staff, or you are a danger to those that are in this environment, then we do have to remove you, okay? We did have to remove James because the drugs were taking over his mind. And so then let me tell you what happened. We lost contact with him. 3 years ago, I'm at leadership community with about 30 of our leaders in the lobby. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. It's cold. I think it was January. And I wasn't teaching at the time, and I saw a guy, heavier set, tall, walk up to the door, and he grabbed the door and he opened it, so I walked over to meet him. And he said, "My name's James." He goes, "I don't know if you remember me, but I jumped up while you were preaching one time, and your security guy quickly took care of the situation." And I said, "Yeah, James, now I remember you." I said, "You look really good." Because he had gained some weight and he had some meat on his bones. And he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I finally found Christ." He goes, "And I got off of meth. And my life's been changed." And I want to come down here and I want to read this because I was in a meeting with Pastor Jordan this week, and him and Tim and I, and he goes, "Hey, can you hang tight after this meeting?" So him and I were talking. He goes, "I want to share this with you." And I knew that James had gotten a job at Raising Cane's. He's got 2 jobs. And I'm just going to read this. This is from Raising Cane's here in Belton, Missouri. This is why we do what we do. This is why we want to reflect Christ. James Lucas, store C483, Shiver Me Tenders, Belton, Missouri. James has made remarkable progress as a crew member at Raising Cane's, notably in the last quarter of 2024. Having mastered all of the positions in the restaurant from front counter to drive-through to the kitchen, he has become a versatile and dependable team player. His dedication to learning and his commitment to excellence in every task. Oh, sorry. I got to read that again. His dedication to learning and improving has been evident to his willingness to take on new challenges and his commitment to excellence in every task. James has grown significantly since his first day, transforming from a beginner into a confident and skilled team member who contributes greatly to the restaurant's success. We can't wait to see how James continues his keen story or journey here at store C483 in Belton, Missouri. Let's give James a hand. Now, here's a guy that was tripping on meth. Our church said, "Hey, we love you. We care about you." We started working with him. He had to go get some help. Okay, which, by the way, let me just say this. I don't even know why I'm going to say this. If you're struggling with some kind of addiction, there is nothing wrong with getting help. There is no shame. There's no shame. And so now James is reflecting Jesus at Cane's in Belton, Missouri. He's paying his bills. He's got an apartment. what we're about at this church. We're not about building a mega church. We're about building a mega influence. And James is reflecting Christ. And it's because of what Jesus has done in him. And go back to that verse. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. In fact, if you go by Canes and you see James, big guy, you can't miss him. All right, you have to look up to him, big guy, all right? And you can ask him, James Lucas is his name, and go by and tell him that you're proud of him for reflecting Jesus. Wouldn't that be cool? They'd be like, James, dang, you're a star. Listen to what Mother Teresa said. I love this. A little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world. She said, I'm a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world. Reflecting Jesus means living out his love. You know what that means? That means loving people the way Jesus has loved you. Number two, I didn't want to talk about this because it's convicting. Number two, reflecting Jesus in marriage. Marriage is the hardest thing that you will ever do in your life. If you're looking at getting married, I'm not trying to scare you away from marriage. I'm just trying to help you set your expectations. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 has been relegated to weddings. I hate that because it has so much more application. But listen to what 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7 says. It says, love is patient and kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And the problem is in marriage, when you're in a marriage, you love one another and you know you accept one another. And so the opportunity to hurt one another more deeply exists than any other relationship. And for me to say, God, how can I reflect Jesus to Linda? Here it is. You ready? Even when I don't want to or feel like it. Do you always feel like reflecting Jesus to your spouse or significant other? Nope. Kind of want to dig your heel in, don't you? You want to prove a point. Listen, I learned this a long time ago. You can prove a point, or you can be in a relationship, but you can't be both. So go ahead and prove your point. Let them know who's right. You can be right, and you lose the relationship. Listen, when you're in a marriage, I'm supposed to be reflecting Christ, which is hard to do. And there's times where I feel like we're at war with one another. And I got to remember, we're on the same team. Even though we're fighting issues and things that we disagree about, we're on the same team. We should never be pointing the guns at one another. We should be able to figure out what the issue is. And I'll say this too. There's no shame in going to marriage counseling. For the love of Jesus. If it weren't for marriage counseling, I wouldn't be married. Don't be afraid of counseling. I'm just keeping it real. Authentic people reflecting Jesus. Is that okay? Good, because I'm going to do it anyways. Number 3, reflecting Jesus as a parent. I'm just giving you some things to think about today. How do I reflect Jesus as a parent? Those of you that have little babies, it's fairly easy, all right? The schedule's not easy. But life is fairly easy. You think you got it all together. My kids haven't done anything wrong. They haven't committed any crimes. They don't hang out with bad people, you know. All right? The challenge becomes when your kids become teenagers and it doesn't always go like you think it's going to go. it becomes challenging to figure out, how do I reflect Jesus as a parent? Number 4, how do I reflect Jesus in business? Do I reflect Jesus to those I work with? Like, I'm not talking about you going to work and preaching and saying to your coworkers that you're a Christian and letting them know and having your Bible and having a big Bible. And you know what? Everywhere I go, when I'm at the fire station, I don't preach. I just live with the guys and hang out. And we use the word guys loosely. It's the crew. They know that I'm a firefighter. They know I'm a chaplain. And if they want to talk, but here's the deal. How am I reflecting Jesus? When I fail, do I excuse it? Do I make an excuse? Do I try to blame someone else or go, you know what, I failed. I messed up. Do they see me as a Christ follower giving my best? Does my staff here at the church see me as a Christ follower living out and taking what God has given me and being a good steward of it? Or am I lazy? How do you reflect Jesus at work? How do you reflect Jesus in your business dealings? See, Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. I'll give you a hot button. It'll make everybody want to leave, but don't leave. How you reflecting Jesus in your taxes? Just asking. Because we're to reflect Jesus in everything we do. And if you're a 1099 and you start fudging on things, let me tell you, we had a LifeQuester one time. And he kept fudging on things. And pretty soon the FBI showed up and he went to prison for not paying taxes. Wow, I don't know why the tax is so expensive anyway. Listen, I get it, I do. But it doesn't matter what you think. Because Romans chapter 13 says that I am to obey the laws of the land. And taxes are one of those things. I don't like taxes, but I got to pay it. Fun fact, that's why more and more organizations, including the fire service, when you go to apply, you get a background check and they look at your finances too. Are you been in court, in and out of court with the government? Are you paying your taxes? You cannot be a real estate agent and owe taxes unless you have a payment plan. You can't be in real estate, can you, David? Can't. You know why? Because you have a lot of responsibility, and if you haven't been handling that well, you in trouble. So I'm just asking, how am I reflecting Jesus in business? Sometimes we want to divorce our faith when it comes to how we live outside the church walls. That is the biggest mistake in Christianity. That compartmentalized living. Well, I'm one way here and I'm one way there. The greatest compliment I could get from anybody is, like, when I see you at church as a pastor, you're like the same person here and there. And I'm like, yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. Reflect Jesus. How do I reflect Jesus in business? I don't have to, when I'm at the table at the firehouse and everybody's getting ready to eat dinner and they're starting to chow down, I don't have to say, everybody, I'm going to pray now. Father, I pray for my food and I pray for all of the crew that's not praying for their food, Lord. I don't do that. You know what I do? Just bow my head and pray. I don't make no big show out of it. Because it's not a show, it's just me thanking Jesus for my food. Sometimes I just whisper, Jesus, thank you for my food. Thank you for what you've given. Thank you. Thank you. How am I reflecting Jesus? Let me give you another one. How am I reflecting Jesus in conflict? Remember the big idea question today, how do I reflect Jesus in my life? A lot of people want to run from conflict. I deal with this all the time. People want to run from conflict. Listen, Conflict is an opportunity for you to build a stronger relationship with your spouse, with your coworkers, with your neighbors, with whoever you have that conflict with, and to get together and to learn the skill. We actually teach this at this church, to learn the skill of expressing your point of view and listening to someone else's point of view and taking on the position that I might be wrong about this. And to reflect Jesus in the conflicts in my life. How are you doing at that? See, reflecting Jesus doesn't mean perfection. It means living authentically as his follower, pointing others to him through your life. Not with your words. Shh. Stop speaking. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say until you live it out. That's what we want. And so we're going to go into a time of worship through music. Let me pray. The band's going to come up. Will you stand with me? So, Father, I pray right now that as we go and worship you through music, Lord, that you would take the things that you've been dealing with us in our hearts and help us to come face to face. I don't know what you've convicted, Holy Spirit. Well, I don't know what you've convicted. Maybe there's some people here today that have never received you. John 1:12 says, just as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. God, maybe there's those people that need to surrender to you. Maybe there's others that need to say, I'm not reflecting Jesus as a husband or a father or as a wife or as a mom. I'm not reflecting Jesus as an employee or as an employer. Help us to begin to reflect and then to respond. So here's what I want you to do. Look up here, look up here. We have an altar up here. We got a prayer team that'll be up here. I'll be around. If you want to come up and pray during the next 3 songs, or if you need to be prayed for. If you say, you know what? I want to know more about Jesus. I want to know more about this Jesus that you talk about who died on the cross and rose again, who died for my sins and made a way for me to have abundant life here on earth and eternal life in heaven. We'd love to talk to you about that. So we want to use this as a response time.